Well, good afternoon, everybody. I just want to give you a little bit of the picture of what we're going to do here this afternoon. First of all, I want to welcome everybody here, both the folks from the local news and if there's anybody here beyond our local area. It's good that you're here today, and I'm glad that you're going to be here to be able to report our side of the story. I think the second thing I wanted to mention, I'm going to be giving a prepared statement, and then we'll have an opportunity to entertain any questions that you may have, so I'm looking forward to that as well. But I have to say that it's always my practice to begin sessions like this with a prayer, and for those of you who are Catholic, you know that we're on the eve of celebrating a pretty big feast in honor of Mary, so please join with me in thought as we approach Mary, the Mother of Jesus. O Virgin Mary, faithful Mother, who never refuses to come to the aid of your children, Mother whose hands never cease to help because they're moved by the loving kindness that exists in your Immaculate Heart, cast your eyes of compassion upon all of us and see the snarl of knots that exist in our lives. You know all the pains and sorrows caused by our tangled knots. Mary, our Mother, we entrust to your loving hands the entire ribbons of our lives. In your hands there is no knot which cannot be undone. Most Holy Mother, pray for divine help to come to our aid. Take our knots into your motherly hands this day. We beg you to undo them for the glory of God once and for all, and in the name of your divine Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Well, I can't say it enough. I'm grateful that you are all here today. And while we have had an opportunity many times to gather together for issues that affect our region and affect our church, I must confess that it is difficult to stand before you today at this moment. Yet I wouldn't want to be, I couldn't be any place else than to be with you at this time. The women and men of the grand jury have spoken. They have spoken for victims. And to those women and men and all those for whom they have spoken, we hear you. The church hears you. I hear you. First, let me say that in the name of the Church of Pittsburgh, and in my own name, and in the name of my predecessors, we are sorry. I am sorry. We all must take this report to heart. It is a story of people's lives, people who need to be heard, people who need to be healed. It is a cause to which we must remain committed long after this story has faded from the headlines. No one who reads this report, whether all or in part, can be unaffected. Some are affected because they are victims of child sexual abuse. The release of this report either will help them to heal or will reopen wounds they have worked hard to heal. Some are affected because they are moms and dads who empathize with the undying pain of the mom or dad of a victim. Some are affected because they will feel betrayed by a church that has been their inspiration. I want to say this. I promise to meet with any victim to apologize to them in person and in the name of the church. Today, I again apologize to any person or family whose trust, faith, and well-being has been devastated by men who were ordained to be nothing less than the image of Jesus Christ. Ever since I met my first victims of clergy sexual abuse back in 1988, I have seen the immense pain that this crime causes to its victims, to their loved ones, and to the heart of Jesus himself. Their words break my heart. I have cried with them and have cried for them over the damage done to them and their families by men whose lives should have been committed to protecting their souls from any kind of harm. I dedicate myself to helping them and to doing everything possible to prevent such abuse from ever happening again. We cannot bury our heads in the sand. There were instances in the past, as outlined in this report, when the church acted in ways that did not respond effectively to victims. Swift and firm responses to allegations should have started long before they did. For that, I express profound regret. At the same time, I express gratitude to those who have taught us how to respond with compassion to people who are wounded and with determination to remove offenders from any kind of ministry. But to apologize and to express sorrow for the past is an important step, but it is not enough. Continued action is necessary. The Diocese of Pittsburgh today is not the church that is described in the grand jury report. It has not been that way for a long time. Over the course of the last 30 years, we have made significant changes to how we prevent abuse and report allegations. The issue of assisting victims and of creating safe environments for our children is primary and paramount. I want to show the faithful and our broader community that we have learned from the past. We have implemented reforms to prevent child sexual abuse, and we will continue to do so. It's one thing to tell you what we've done, it's another to show you. And I ask you to take a look for a moment at the graph that you have here before you. This graph highlights the sharp decline in reported incidents of child sexual abuse since the Diocese of Pittsburgh began to implement reforms in the late 1980s. It depicts them when the abuse was alleged to have occurred, not when it was reported. And as you can see, and as I continue to say, at least 90% of all reported cases occurred before 1990. Once again, I want to indicate 90% of all reported cases occurred before 1990, with the greatest preponderance of those in the 1980s. Also, it's important to note that there is no priest or deacon in public ministry today in the Diocese of Pittsburgh with a substantiated allegation of child sexual abuse against him. Let me share with you some of the actions that we as a diocese have taken over the last 30 years to address child sexual abuse. For over 30 years, seminarians have been screened through psychological testing. The curriculum at seminaries has been overhauled to better prepare men for a healthy celibate lifestyle. Beginning in 1989, we have engaged an independent review board to address allegations of child sexual abuse. Since 1993, the Diocesan Assistance Coordinator has met with victims and continues to respond to their needs with great compassion. We offer psychological counseling for victims and their families with a licensed therapist of their choice. We have provided financial assistance to our victims. Since 1993, we have encouraged victims to contact civil authorities, and since 2002, we have committed ourselves to doing the same. We are and have been transparent in our policies. Once again, we are and have been transparent in our policies, relaying information to our faithful and to the media at large. All of our churches and all of our schools are required to display our toll-free child sex abuse hotline and a number for local child preventive services. We have conducted child protection workshops and online training for more than 70,000 people, clergy, employees, and volunteers in our churches, schools, and institutions. We have secured criminal and child abuse background checks for more than 70,000 people, clergy, employees, and volunteers alike. We have created an office for the protection of children and young people to oversee these efforts. And finally, independent auditors review and evaluate our child protection practices every year, with on-site audits occurring every 3 years. We pledge to continue these practices, always working closely with local law enforcement, who are the front line in the effort to eliminate child sexual abuse and to prosecute perpetrators. We are constantly evaluating and searching for new ways to strengthen our practices to prevent child sexual abuse. Today, I am identifying 3 of those steps. First, we have engaged an expert on the prevention and the prosecution of child sexual abuse to thoroughly review our practices and make recommendations for how we can improve them. Shea Bilchek, a research professor at Georgetown University, is the former president of the Child Welfare League of America. He has extensive experience as a state prosecutor in Florida, specializing in children's issues. He was also the administrator of the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention at the U.S. Department of Justice, where his portfolio included child protection. He has already begun a preliminary review of our work. Second, we have created a position and are hiring an experienced professional to actively monitor clergy who have been removed from ministry following allegations of child sexual abuse. And finally, with the release of this report, and as I promised, we have posted on our website a list of 83 priests of the Diocese of Pittsburgh against whom there have been allegations of sexual abuse of minors, including 15 that the grand jury chose not to publish. In its report on the Diocese of Pittsburgh, the grand jury names 90 priests and religious brothers as offenders. In his news conference this afternoon, the Attorney General indicated 99 people, but 9 of those were unnamed, and the Attorney General himself said that they were not listed by name because there was not enough evidence to be able to say that there was substantive information for them to be on the list. It must be noted that of the 90 that you see named in the grand jury report, 68 of the priests are from the Diocese of Pittsburgh, and 22 are either priests of other dioceses or priests or brothers of religious orders. Now, I want to say something about our published list. It is delineated as follows. First, there is a list of those who are living and have been removed from ministry. Second, there are those who were removed from ministry who are now deceased. And third, there are those who were deceased when an allegation was made against them. In the past, I truly believe that turning these names over to law enforcement officials was appropriate and sufficient action. I was concerned about releasing the names when the priest was deceased and could not defend himself. However, I believe that the conclusion of the grand jury investigation requires a much higher level of transparency on our part. There is also a separate listing of clergy in the Diocese of Pittsburgh against whom allegations were made which were not substantiated as child sexual abuse, but whose names appear in the grand jury report. Some of these clergy remain in ministry. Not included in our list are priests and brothers from religious orders and clergy from other dioceses. But their names appear in the grand jury report because the abuse was alleged to have occurred while they lived or served in the Diocese of Pittsburgh. When the allegations were brought forth against them, we removed them from ministry if they were still active in the diocese. The Diocese of Pittsburgh reported the allegations to the appropriate district attorney and referred their cases to their religious order or diocese, which have the responsibility to make a determination about their fitness for ministry. Finally, the list does not include the names of those individuals who have appeals pending before the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania regarding their constitutional rights in relation to the grand jury report. Their rights and the work of the Supreme Court need to be respected. If the Supreme Court orders that their names be restored in the report, they will be added to the Diocese of Pittsburgh list. I assure you that we will continue to turn over all allegations to appropriate law enforcement. Given that the grand jury report covers a period of 70 years, I would be remiss if I did not express my gratitude for the faithful service of more than 1,700 diocesan priests who have served the people of our diocese with dedication and distinction. For those who are reviewing the grand jury report, I want to call your attention to the response the diocese submitted. Our response is not intended to be a criticism of the grand jury report. Instead, it is intended to correct, in part, factual inaccuracies or omissions. I want to close by speaking directly to victims. Again, I express my sincere sorrow for the pain that you have suffered at the hands of someone who was supposed to care for your soul. My apology comes with our sincere effort to improve and our continuing invitation to meet with you and to assist you with resources for healing. As I began my remarks, so do I close. To those of you who have in any way been the victim of any abuse, sexual or otherwise, whether as a child or as an adult, or as a parent, or as a sibling, or as a friend who shared the pain of that someone you love, I ask you, the Church asks you for forgiveness. For whatever ways any representative of the Church has hurt, offended, dismissed, ignored any one of you, I ask you, the Church asks you for forgiveness. With all the love in my heart and with all the sincerity in my soul, you can be assured that I will continue to do all that I can to restore your trust in the Church and to work together with you to reflect the very love, compassion, and mercy of Jesus himself in and through the Church. Thank you.